Welcome to the Storied Outdoors. Today, I am joined with my co-host, Brad Hill, and I am Brian Gill, and we have a special guest today, Scott Goolsby. He is a high school football coach at Auburn High School. He is the defensive coordinator. Before going to Auburn, Scott, he coached at Charles Henderson High School in Troy for 8 years, and then became the defensive coordinator at Geneva High School, where he coached for 5 years. And then when he went to Auburn High School in 2013, and then in 2020, he was named the defensive coordinator. In 2021, Scott was honored with the Broyles Award given to the top assistant coach in the state. Scott, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Man, thank you guys for having me. I've told you guys before, I'm honored. And Brian, you know, we've known each other for a long time. And I tell people all the time, Brian Gill is one of the finest human beings that I've ever known in my life. And he's been like that since I've known him at 5 years old, when my sister and his sister were, you know, playing together in East Bruton, Alabama. He's always been a great person. So I'm proud of Brian, and I'm just honored to be on here with you.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. I had a good role model in Scott Goolsby. Scott was an incredible football player for W.S. Neal High School in East Bruton, Alabama, and his number was number 45. And so, you know, you're a little bit older than me, and so whenever I went to high school, I started playing football. I told the coaches I want to be number 45, just like Scott Goolsby. And so that was my inspiration, just not only your ability on the football field, but also your character. And just loved getting to see you excel and as a coach and as a man. And I know you're really involved with your church at First Baptist Opelika with the men's ministry. And so, Scott, man, thank you for your kind words, but it's because I had people like you to look up to as an example.
Thank you, Brian. That means a lot, man.
That's awesome, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. I grew up, just so you get a little context, I grew up in Monroeville, Alabama. So just down Highway 84 from you guys.
Absolutely.
Over there in Bruton. And but growing up, obviously a lot, you know, anybody in South Alabama, we played football, you know, right. And loved football. And so I loved the game of football. And in fact, I mean, even right here, I'm sure my coaches would not appreciate the fact that I have this. This is the old Golden Dome from Monroe County High School.
The Golden Dome.
So if you're watching on YouTube, you can get to see this thing. That was my senior year. I was able to hold on to that thing because it was beat up and scuffed up. But loved the game of football. Thought that was something that I was going to do. I was mediocre at best, but went on a few recruiting visits, and nothing ever panned out because in retrospect, it wasn't what the Lord, you know, had for me, but I loved it. And my plan, as always, we always make plans, right? And the Lord says, that's really nice. But my plan was, that's cute. Yeah. Was to go play ball somewhere, and coach, because that was my way of working in like ministry. I knew deep down I had a call to ministry, which now I'm a pastor at a church, on staff at a church here in Mobile. But I knew I was called to ministry. So I was trying to make it work with what I really wanted to do. And that was play football. And God was like, no, we're not doing that. And he sent me to the University of Mobile that, you know, had a soccer team. You know, I didn't even know what soccer was hardly, you know, when I got to Mobile. But I loved the game of football. I loved the idea of coaching. Some of the most profound experiences that I had were on the football field. And because of coaches, some of the strongest and most influential men in my life growing up were not pastors. They were my coaches. I mean, straight up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, man, that's what I wanted to do. And so I understand like the passion behind that. Can you talk a little bit for you in your story? Can you talk a little bit about why coaching and why coaching the game of football?
Right. Well, I've always loved the game too. Like you said, I mean, since I was a child, I've always loved it. And sometimes I wonder where did I get that from? Because my dad didn't play high school football. He didn't play. He played basketball for 1 year. He built homes with my grandfather, and that was something that I was never interested in. I've always loved sports, specifically football. And one of my favorite pictures my mother has of me is I'm probably 2, and I've got a trucker hat turned around backwards like a football helmet. I'm in a stance in the den, pretending like I'm playing football. But it's just something that I've always loved, and my parents did not let me play it until I got into the 7th grade. And I was always jealous of the little kids, my buddies that wore their, jerseys to school on Fridays. And I so wanted to play, but my dad had his reasons and he wouldn't let me play. And when I got into the 7th grade, he finally let me play. And my high school football coach, Hugh Fountain, is one of the finest human beings. He's a great person. And the way he treated me and the way he coached our team with character, and I never heard him cuss. And, he treated us like we were his own sons. Part of that is part of the reason that I'm coaching today. Just by the way he treated me. And I've told him that, but, sometimes as a coach, you forget that you have an impact on people. I guess you don't realize the impact that you have sometimes. And I don't know if Coach Fountain truly understands, but I've been in coaching for 23 years. And when I think back to, because I've been asked that question before, why did you start coaching? It's just the love for the game. And it's the way he treated me when I was in high school. And I try to treat the kids that I coach every day the way he treated me, like they're a person, not like they're a tool out there to just win a football game, and like they have a future and like they're important. And so, that's really the biggest reason that I got into it. And why football? I don't really know why football. I think God steered me to that, because I played all 3 sports in high school, but I think God steered me to that sport partly because I feel like I'm a physical person by nature, and I like that part of the game, the hitting and the aggressiveness and all. And it's such an outlet for boys to get out there and be aggressive and be physical. And I just love that part of the game. It's my favorite part of the game. And if they ever take that part away from the game, I don't think I could coach it, because it's such an equalizer out there on the field. So the way my coach impacted me, and I think just the nature of the game, is what drew me into it initially, and is what keeps me in it now. To be honest with you, I thought when I got into coaching, by this stage in my career, I would be out of coaching and I would be in administration. I've got an administration degree, and I've always liked the idea of being a principal and running a school, but I've been doing it for 23 years and I don't want to get out. Now's not the time to get out. And once God tells me, hey, now's the time, and starts giving me some of those signs, then I'll get out, of course. But now's not the time. So I'm enjoying it too much right now.
Scott, what is it about the what is it about coaches? Brad mentioned it earlier, as far as the impact on a young man's life. What is it about a coach that is able to speak life into so many that they coach?
I don't really know I don't know how to put my finger on what the answer is to that, but I think it's got something to do with, I think the most successful coaches are the coaches that really and truly love their kids. And, you've probably heard the saying before, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And that's, I worry about it all the time with the kids that I coach. I don't want them to think that I don't care about them. And obviously we've got to go win a football game. We got to, that's part of it. And sometimes I struggle with that sometimes, because I'd like to play every kid on the team, but you can't. You can't do that. And there's some that are just great kids. I had kids this year, good kids, love them to death. I really do. And I hope they go off and have great lives. But you can't play them all. And I struggle with that sometimes, but I think that's probably, for me at least, that's what I try to do. And that's how I try to speak life into kids, is I try to love them and I love watching a kid gain confidence through the game. And I like trying to instill that confidence in them, not just through a football technique, but there's so much about football you can transfer to life. And I think that's probably the biggest reason is they can connect with us because we're similar. If they're playing football, they're similar to us. Something drew them to the game. And oftentimes it's the physical nature of the game. Sometimes it's being part of a team, being around people. Sometimes it's the family atmosphere. A lot of these kids come from broken homes. And when they get around us, and I've been fortunate enough to be on good staffs that have good intentions. I've never served on a staff that was out there really selfishly for themselves. They've always been in it for the right reasons. And I think that draws kids to us, and it makes kids want to be a part of your team and be around you. And so I think it's a lot of different reasons, but I think being a part of a family and being a part of a team, and when you get that, a kid that just is drawn to the game for whatever reason, it's easy to speak life into them. If you yourself as the coach has really good intentions and you're doing it for the right reason, it's going to show. And I think kids are drawn to that.
Yeah, kids usually have a pretty good BS detector too, and they know.
They do.
They know who's fake and who's real. And man, when they find out somebody's real, I mean they're drawn to those guys and really hungry for that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a struggle, like I said, because you've got to win the game,
right?
And you got to play the best, and that's a struggle sometimes, but that's part of it too.
Well, even those players who don't make it onto the field are making those who do better.
Yeah.
In practice, and that's the thing about it. It's a part of a team,
right.
And it's part of that family. And, there's if in my experience, and you follow Alabama playing football, you follow high school was 50% white, 50% black. Yeah. But on that football field, we were red and white. That was our team colors.
Right.
And it wasn't about race on that football field. And we were all one family. We were brothers out there. And, I didn't have a brother growing up, but I had a lot of them on that football field.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting listening to, I think it wasn't very long ago, and it may have been one of the Manning shows. I think Peyton Manning has one of those shows on ESPN Plus or whatever. They were talking to somebody about what do you miss about the game, and it wasn't as much the playing or the game itself. It's always seems to be the camaraderie.
Right.
And so coaching puts you firmly around that camaraderie all the time, which seems to would be a draw for me. Is like you said, if you're coming to play this game to suit up, then there's something that we have in common that's not like everybody else, because you're drawn to contact,
right,
and you're not afraid of that. You're willing to strap on pads and helmets and go hit someone. So if you have that mentality, then we're probably going to get along. Yeah. And there's a community and there's a brotherhood that's there that's like no other. And people that have never played that game, they don't understand that, but there is a brotherhood there there's some unspoken things, and there's something that's really, really special when it comes to a football team. And I'm grateful for those experiences. You said it earlier. There are so many life experiences that you learn serious long life lessons between the hash marks, and things that stick with you like nothing else. And I can't tell you how many times I'll utter, some saying from a coach in my head when, you're about to do something sort of halfway or not do it the whole way. Mm-hmm. Reed Utsey was an offensive line coach for me. And he says, if you do it right, you do it light. If you do it wrong, we're going to do it long. And so he taught me quickly the desire to do it right the first time. Because if you don't, it's going to turn into something really long. Well, that's a really great saying, and that's true throughout life if you take the time to do it right. And so that lesson will always stick with me, because there's blood, there's sweat, and there's tears involved in learning that lesson, and it's so vivid. And that, man, to me, that's the draw of football for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad, Brian, you mentioned the football locker room, and if the world was more like a football locker room, we would have a lot less problems. We don't have racial problems in the locker room. And that's one thing I love about the game is, there's so many different backgrounds in there racially. There's so many different economic backgrounds in there. But once you get in that locker room and you get out there on the football field and you put your hand in the dirt, none of that matters.
Yep.
And I just, I love that about the game. And I, the camaraderie is so huge. And I think when it is time for me to step out of coaching, that'll be one of the, God, that'll be hard to step away from, is being part of a staff.
Mm.
I enjoy that. So that'll be tough.
Nothing quite like a team.
Absolutely.
What is there an experience that we talk a lot about the outdoors here, and football is a game played outdoors.
Predominantly,
yeah.
Bougie teams that have some indoor facilities.
Yeah. Is there an experience in the outdoors where you felt like God used it to shape you? Maybe it involved football or coaching, or I know that you're big into the Spartan races as well. Is there something that an outdoor experience that God has kind of taught you something through?
Well, I don't know if there's one particular experience that I can point to, but I'll say this: I love big skies and wide open spaces and pretty sunsets and pretty sunrises. I haven't noticed myself enjoying that until I got older. Like maybe 35, I started thinking, man, like I really like sunsets. And I don't remember liking sunsets when I was 18 years old, but there's just something about them that is calming, right? And it's just kind of peaceful. And so I love, like, when you look outside of our coach's office, you can see the sunset. And so almost every day after football practice, when we come up into the office and the day's over and, hectic school day and football practice, and it's a long day, and you can come up in the coach's office and sit there and just look at the sunset, a beautiful sunset. It's just a reminder that, like, God's there, and coaching. And I'm sure we'll talk about this later. It can be stressful, and it can be a roller coaster ride. And you deal with not just football, you deal with personalities and kids' problems. And like I said, if you care about them, you feel those problems too. And so it can get stressful at times. But I do that often, man. I come upstairs and sit at my desk and just look out that sunset and think, man, how awesome is God? Like, we're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. And so there's no particular event, I don't think, but I do love to do that. And I do love to watch the sunrise in the morning. And it's just a good reminder of his promises in life. And you did mention the Spartan race. And so I got into that last year. And I don't know why I got into it, other than I kind of started working out a little more seriously and stumbled across it. And a friend of mine was doing it. And I mentioned liking competition. And I don't have anything for me to compete at my age. I coach these kids to compete, and that is competition for me, but I don't do anything physical to go compete at. And I kind of was looking for something. So I thought, I can't do a Spartan race. Like, there's no way I can do that. But I signed up, and it got canceled, COVID and all this kind of stuff. And we finally got it set for Jacksonville, Florida last April, I think it was. And gosh, I'm not good at Spartan and Tough Mudders. I'm not good at those. But I remember running through the woods in Jacksonville, Florida by myself, because it's not a team event. You're by yourself, running through the woods, mud, and you come out into this open field. And then, like I said, I like wide open spaces, and it was this huge wide open space, and there's obstacles you're getting to. And I remember just literally laughing out loud, thinking, how crazy is this, that I'm in Jacksonville, Florida? I don't know any of these people. It's beautiful out here in the woods, and I'm just running through it. And it was almost worshipful being out there. And I haven't really talked to a lot of people about this, but confidence has been something that I've struggled with throughout my whole life. Really, it's kind of been a wave for me, and the Spartan races have been something for me to prove that I can do this, and I can, do pull-ups, I can do monkey bars, I can climb over this wall and whatever other obstacles they throw out there. So it's been a confidence builder for me to go do those races. But just being outdoors in that is such a draw. And I've got another one that I'm training for right now in March the 19th in Atlanta. So I'm kind of addicted to them. And part of it is the environment, the outdoors area that the race is in. It's so cool. Just feeling the breeze and the sun on your skin, and you're by yourself. And I was listening to the girl that you guys had on that ran the 100-mile marathon.
Yeah. Courtney.
Which blows my mind that somebody could run 100 miles. I think your wife did that, didn't she?
She did a 50 miler. Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
I listened to her whole podcast, and then I listened to the one the other day. I was scrolling back through, and y'all had brought her back on.
Yeah.
And she was talking about it. That blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind.
It's a different whole different ball game.
It's unreal. But I understood what she was talking about, being outside and doing that in nature by yourself. Because I do it on a much smaller scale with a Spartan race, but the draw is still the same.
Man, you talk about struggling with confidence, and saying that, being able to articulate that as a man, I think is important. Being able to identify areas where we need to grow. But one thing that is helpful is when you get validated externally about what you're doing. Right. And winning the Broyles Award for the state of Alabama, that is a major award. I mean, that is the top assistant football coach for the state. And anybody who's listening knows that football is king in the state of Alabama. To be able to say that about Alabama, man, congratulations. What is that like? What is winning that award done?
Man, it's been unbelievable. And I'll say this, it's supposed to recognize the top assistant coach in the state. And I don't look at myself as the top assistant coach in the state. And I'm very honored and very thankful to win the award, and the experience of going out to Arkansas and being part of that banquet and meeting all the people that I met. It was unreal. I mean, it was truly unreal. And just to have my name associated with Frank Broyles it just blows my mind. It's one of those things I can't get my mind wrapped around it. But, when I came to Auburn High in 2013, I was pretty low mentally now. And I have not told a lot of people this, but I was pretty low mentally. I had went to Geneva as the defensive coordinator, and my plans were to go there and kill it. I mean, we were going to be great, and I was going to be the top assistant coach in the state of Alabama, and I was going to become a head coach, and everybody was going to know my name. That was my plans. That didn't happen. Like we were not very good. And I take things, I guess, personal. Like, I want to be good at whatever I do. Mm-hmm. And I took that job, the lack of success we had there, extremely hard, and took it as all my fault. Now, I didn't do a good job there. Looking back on it, I did not. But what turned out to be my last season there, I came home the first game of that season and told my wife, I said, I'm done. We're leaving. Like, just go ahead and get prepared. Like, we're moving when this season's over with. I don't know where. But when that season ended, we started looking and praying. And, to make a long story short, it came down to 3 jobs. And Auburn was the best place to live. I'm not a coach that I don't want to move around a ton. And so I was kind of looking for a place I could get my family. And Auburn was the best place to live, but the job was not the job. And it was almost like, looking back on it, it was like God was saying, look, you've not trusted me with your coaching career up to this point. These have been your plans. You were going to go do this. You were going to go do that. You got to trust me with your coaching career. And so I remember praying through this, moving to Auburn and thinking the job offer was to be the defensive coordinator for the 9th grade football team. It was not a varsity level job. And I had went into Geneva with plans to be the best coach in the state of Alabama. And I'm sitting there going, there were so many things that was pointing me to this job. And I'm going, God, this is what you're doing. Like, this is what you want me to go take is a JV job. But everything kept pointing to this job. So I took it and just gambled and gave God my coaching career and just said, look, like, do with it whatever. And to be standing there speaking in front of a crowd, accepting the Broyles Award for the state of Alabama was almost overwhelming to think how far he had brought me, because for me to even get the defensive coordinator job at Auburn High, so many things had to happen. So many dominoes had to fall. I was kept by a new coach. I was kept by another new coach. You know, a lot of times that doesn't happen. They cut those guys and they bring in the guy that they want, but they kept me. And, you know, it's been unbelievable. And it's been such a confidence booster, but also a reminder that God answers prayer. To look back at 2013, and I journaled a lot then and wrote some things down, but to go back and look at what I wrote down and where I was mentally, where I'm at. She actually works here in Auburn. Her friend, her parents sent me a card just congratulating me on the award. I just got it last week, but it had a quote from Charles Stanley on there that said, God has a plan for your life. However, it doesn't snap into place overnight. It takes a lifetime to achieve all he has planned for you. And that kind of hit me to think that God had this plan the whole time.
Mm.
I just had to let go, give him my coaching career, and trust him. And so, you know, when our last head coach decided to leave and we were looking for a new coach, the last time that happened, I was extremely worried, couldn't sleep. We had been in Auburn for 2 years. I thought, I'm an untenured driver's ed teacher. I'm going to get fired. Like, I mean, I'm calling people trying to find jobs. When it happened this most recent time, a year ago, I really wasn't that worried. And I had just gotten the defensive coordinator job. But the reason I wasn't worried was nothing to do with me. It was because God had taken me so far. He wasn't just going to leave me out to dry then. And so it was pretty easy for me to just relax and just let him take control and do what he did. And if we have to look for another coach tomorrow, I'm going to be the same way. I'm just going to let him take care of it because that's maybe not the easiest way, but it's the best way.
Courtney, something that we talked about with her was in our first interview with her, we recorded it and then we ended up like circling back because I felt like we left something on the table.
Yeah.
And what we ended up coming back to was, why was that first race that she didn't finish so impactful? Why was essentially, why was the loss, the quote unquote loss, the bigger lesson? I mean, we rarely remember all of the games that we win. Why is it the loss that sticks out? Why do we learn so much? Why is it such a great teacher? Failure is the best teacher. What has been your experience when it comes to that? Has that been true for you, Coach?
Absolutely. And I wished it wasn't. I wish winning was the best teacher. I don't know why we have to lose to learn. The state championship game, we can talk about that. I've learned so much from that game. But you're right. Geneva was a great place to live. My best friends, some of my best friends are in Geneva right now. We talk and text daily. It's a great place to live. I couldn't get it going there. And but you're right. I look back on that and so many things that I either did or didn't do. I look back and it's such a lesson. Such a lesson teacher, you know, and then the state championship game, my word.
Walk us through that. Because here's, from my perspective, man, I was not able to follow this on TV or any radio. I was following it on Twitter.
Right.
And so I'm watching this Twitter feed and it's, you guys are going into the last few seconds of the game. And I text you, I said, congratulations, buddy. Great job. And then the next thing I know, everybody's talking about the Auburn didn't win. I'm like, well, yeah, they did. I saw it. They had already announced it. Some sports writers were announcing Auburn wins the state championship.
Really?
And then I had to send you a text and say, buddy, I'm so sorry. I literally thought y'all had
dozens of those.
Did you really?
Yeah, dozens of them. It was, you know, we were up 9 points with 19 seconds left. And I've learned so many lessons from that. But it goes back, you know, when we got to the state championship game, we won the semifinal game and we're going to the state championship game. I reached out to, and of course it was an exciting time, but we're playing Thompson, who everybody has looked at as they're going to walk to the state championship. They're an ultra talented football team, well coached, and just a complete football team. And so it turned into one of these deals where, like, well, y'all are there, great, but you're not going to win. And I remember listening to the night we won the semifinals, listening to a radio show, and all three guys picked Thompson. And I got up the next morning. My routine is to get up on Saturday morning and watch the film from Friday night and then immediately turn on the next opponent. Well, I watched the film from Friday night, and I remember telling my wife, I'm not watching Thompson yet, because we didn't play until the next Wednesday. So we had, 10 or 11 days. So I was like, I got a little time. I'm going to enjoy this one before I turn on the film and see what's awaiting us in the state championship game. So I didn't turn the film on until later that night. And when I turned it on, I thought, well, Mike can do this. Like, I got a little confidence from watching the film. But then when I talked to other coaches, it was still kind of the same thing. Hey, I reached out to other guys and tried to get ideas, game plan. It was kind of like, hey, they're really, really good. Enjoy the experience. It's going to be fun. That's kind of going to be.
But you're going to lose.
Really made me, I'm going to be honest, I really made me angry and really gave me fire to get with our staff and come up with the absolute best game plan we could and go in there and make history.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like what Saban said, I guess, when the media was kind of downgrading Alabama in the SEC championship game, they used that as their fuel. We kind of used that as our fuel. Absolutely, and so to go through the game, and then the game started off kind of both sides were a little nervous, and I don't know how confident we were. Our guys were not scared. They weren't fearful. And boy, the second half, they were really playing good football. And we were up 9 points with 19 seconds left. Okay. And I had actually taken my headsets off like you do at the end of a game. I had taken them off and found out, hey, we're punting, come back up here to the sideline. I was back there with some defensive players, and the events that transpired in that 19 seconds, I don't think will ever transpire ever again in a football game. They blocked a punt, and it landed, hit the ground, and bounced right into the guy's chest, and he runs into the end zone, and they score. They onside kick, get it. They throw 2 passes. There's a PI on both of them. They're in field goal range. They bring a kicker out there that had already badly missed a field goal earlier in the ball game, and he splits the uprights, and they win by 1. And I can't tell you the feeling that I had, and that, because I'm upset for me, but then you look around at all these kids that have poured their guts out and they're just laid out on the field, and you're like, the range of emotions that went through my head were just, I don't even know how to tell you. They're just all over the place. Then we go into the locker room and talk and do our stuff, and kids are just all over the place. They're all over the place. We get all that done. Then you got to go outside and meet your family. And I'm sitting there going, what do I tell my kids? Mm-hmm. Like, there's got to be some kind of lesson in there that I can tell them right now as I walk out there. Because my 12-year-old daughter is she loves the game and she loves coaching and she wants to win. And I knew she was going to be just destroyed. And she was. She's standing there with my wife, and she immediately starts crying, Daddy, why? And I'm like, baby, I don't know why. But this is another example that life's not fair. And just because you're Christian, things aren't going to go right all the time. If they were, we would have won that state championship game. And I did not think that on the way to her to tell her that. I don't know how I told her that, because I'm wondering at that point in time, why? Why did this happen to us? But I think God gave me those words to tell her in that moment as a reminder to her young mind that, and she's a Christian. Things aren't always going to go your way. You're not going to win every game. You're not going to make every team. You're not going to make every shot. And that's not what being a Christian is. And so I hope that's something that she'll remember. But man, in the days after that game, we grieved that almost like a death in the family. To be honest with you, that's what it felt like. We had won a championship, and then it was taken away from you in 19 seconds. And it felt like somebody close to you had died. And I told my wife, I said, baby, if we don't, like, people are going to start bringing us food. Like, this is how we're acting. Like, and no kidding. 2 days after the game, we got food delivered to our house.
Like, we were
text messages, people saying, hey, we're praying for y'all. We're thinking about y'all. What can we do for you? And we had people bring food to our house like somebody had died. And so about a week or so after that, I kind of grieved that like a loss. And it hit me one day. We had some friends in Geneva. There was a major car wreck down there on Christmas Day where 3 teenage girls were killed. And we knew them all. And one of the families we were pretty good friends with when we were in Geneva. And I was outside in the yard playing with my kids, and I thought, you idiot. Like, you're grieving this like somebody had died. And there are families in Geneva that don't have their teenage kids, and here yours are right here playing. Grow up. It was a football game. Like, just get over it. And so I had to just realize that it was a game. Now, does it still hurt that I don't have a state championship ring and all that kind of stuff? Sure. But I still got my family. And hopefully, you know, there'll be another opportunity to coach in a game like that. And if not, that's really not something I can worry about. I did my best in that game. Our players did our best in that game. Our coaches did our best in that game. Nobody expected or wanted that to happen. It happened for a reason, though. And I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's for me to tell that to my daughter after the game, or for me to tell you guys this story, or what. I don't know. I don't know that I'll ever know this side of heaven, but I do know that I learned that, hey, it's a football game, you know, and it was a big one, and we could have made history that night, but we didn't. And so there's so many lessons that I've learned just outside of what I just shared with you guys. There's so many other lessons that have come from that loss. And like I said, I wished I hadn't learned those lessons. I wish we'd have won the game, and I was showing you guys my state championship ring right here, but it didn't work out like that. So,
man, oh man. And when you're talking about that, brings back memories of, you know, there's just a handful of people who win their last football game, you know, and so that it brings back memories of losing in the semifinal rounds of my senior year. And just golly, man, the emotion there, it, like you said, is a roller coaster. It's tough, but you know, you never forget that. But it always, I don't know, it always keeps you hungry and keeps you pushing forward and driving you. You know, you want to succeed, but you also, there's a lot to be learned, like you're saying, in defeat. So
Auburn High's never won a state championship in football.
That's hard to believe.
Kind of hard. It was hard to believe. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And you know, and before those 19 seconds, I thought we'd done it. And that's kind of the stuff that was rolling through my mind. And I was thinking of some of the guys. I hate to say this, but I was thinking of some of the guys that had told me we didn't have a chance. And I was thinking, we didn't have a chance. I was thinking that. And looking back on it,
ready to serve up a plate of "I told you so" right here. I've got it ready.
Absolutely. And I literally had thought about that as I was taking my headsets off. I said, wait till these guys get this phone call. But then later looking back on it, I thought, what a sore winner I would have been if I had done something like that. And I don't know that I would have really taken the steps to call those guys, but what a sore winner I would have been if I'd have done that. So anyway.
Man, so many powerful life lessons that, you know, that teach us perspective. I mean, what great perspective, right? You're absolutely right. Like it was just a game. It was, you know, very impactful game, but in the grand scheme of things, just a game. But it teaches life lessons that last, you know, an eternity. You keyed in on something that I like, you know, this side of eternity, right? And we say we never know like what the Lord was up to. And I was having a conversation with a young man today, and we got into a conversation about heaven and what, you know, what that's going to be like. And I was recommending, one of my favorite books that I've ever read was by Randy Alcorn. He wrote a book called Heaven, and it's what it's titled. It's a wonderful book. I think every believer should take time to read that book. Incredibly encouraging, but it took me down this path of thinking about, you know, obviously what's heaven going to be like, and just opening my mind to the idea that we never know what the Lord is up to. You know, you don't know what those words to your daughter really, you know, how far the proverbial ripples go from that pebble that you threw, right? And I think one of the gifts that we get when we get to heaven is going to be our eyes opened to what God was up to, if that makes sense. And, you know, for you as a coach, you know, all these young men that you've spoken into, and your eyes are going to be open to one passing phrase that you have no idea. You don't even remember saying it to this young man that alters his life. And the guy's like, see, look what I did. That little thing that you didn't even think about, look what I did. And it altered not a life, but it altered even a family. And so we have this eternity to look forward to go, oh, that's what you were doing, or that's what you were up to. Or that loss did have meaning, you know, even though it was just a game, but those words that you gave me that I didn't even think of impacted my daughter's life that generationally had an impact on my whole family.
Yeah.
And so I like that. I like that idea. I don't know, if it has and what's going to go or what's going to be said this side of eternity, but I think the other side of eternity, I think we will know. And man, I'm so encouraged by that.
That will be awesome. And one of the things I struggle with in coaching sometimes, I was telling somebody the other day, and it's kind of funny. On third down in a football game, my thoughts are not necessarily how am I representing Christ in that moment. My thoughts are get off the field, like don't give up the score. And I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, what if I say something I'm not supposed to say, or what if somebody sees me act a certain way? Because now I get intense and I get excited and I get angry and I get frustrated. And I mean, I tell my family, sometimes I'll come home and they'll go, Daddy, are you okay? I saw you and so and so and you and so and so. And I don't even remember what they're talking about because down on that sideline, and as a player, right? But out there coaching, it's just a different world. And you're so wrapped up into the moment and trying to win the game. And I don't want to give up. I'm so competitive. I don't want to give up a single yard. I want to take yards from them. And I want to play really good, dominant defense. And so I'm just so into the game that I don't think that on every play. So before the game, I'll always find a little spot and pray for me, pray for my players, pray for our coaches. And I always just pray, God, help me to honor you. Just help me to act right and just help me to honor you through the game. And I always say, I can't think about this throughout the game because it will take my mind off the play sheet and these calls. Just intercede and help me to honor you in those situations. Because I think my nature is to be a hothead out there. And if I see a certain thing happen on a football field and it's a rival we're playing and I'm competitive and I want to win, I think I'm probably like most guys. I'm like, let's go. Like, let's do this. Like, so I have to pray, God, just help me to be intense, help me to be aggressive, help me to do my job, but help me not to do anything stupid. Like, I don't want to win a game and people look at me like a low character guy. I don't want to do that. I'd rather, I want to make sure I represent him first. So I worry about that and I think about that and I struggle about that because I'm not necessarily thinking that on third down. I'm thinking about what do we want to call here on 3rd and 2 to try to get off the field and not let that team score. So that's a struggle sometimes.
It's certainly a difficult paradox of I want to be gentle and lowly and like Jesus, but I also want you to rip his head off, right? I want you to decleat that young man, right?
My dad would always tell me, it's like, I want you to knock his head off, but I want you also to pick him up, whenever you do it after the play.
Yeah. And those are the funnest games where you do that, where you just beat each other up. And then after the game, you go talk to them and you hug them and you talk to the coaches. And we've got some rivals here at Auburn, and Opelika is one of our biggest rivals. And I know
that's a big one.
I know most of their coaches, and I love playing in that game because there's always going to be a huge crowd. It's going to be very intense. And the student sections are going to get after each other, and they're going to get after the players, and they're going to get after the coaches, and you try to beat each other's face in. But after the game, we always shake each other's hands and hug each other's neck. And I sit in Sunday school with Opelika's defensive coordinator. We sit right beside each other in Sunday school. So,
and then everybody's going to see each other at the Sonic after the game.
Yeah, I like those kind of games that you try to beat each other up, and then you just hug each other's neck when the game's over.
Scott, you talk about your daughter. Every time I see your daughter on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I always picture the daughter of the coach from
Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
Yes, I was thinking that when he was talking about that earlier.
Yeah. And I'm blessed, man, because both of them love the game. They don't, and my wife too, they don't make me worry about being away or being out of the school late or anything like that. I don't ever have to worry about that. And my oldest daughter, she just turned 13 yesterday, loves it. And like I said, I've been doing it for 23 years. And so I'll ask them at the end of every season, hey, do you want Daddy to get out of coaching? And they both panic. No, please don't. They love going to the games and just being a part, being around the boys. And my oldest daughter said something the other day that really hit me. I hope I don't get emotional talking about it, but we were leaving an Auburn gymnastics meet. And it was the day of the 6A state championship game. She said, "Hey, we got to get home. The 6A state championship game is on," which I thought was kind of funny that my 12-year-old daughter is saying, "Let's go home and watch the 6A championship game." And my wife joked with her, and she said, "Baby, you need to grow up and marry the coach." And she starts kind of unloading and going, I'm going to marry a coach, and he's going to be good, and we're going to go to all the state championship games and blah, blah, blah. And we laughed. But then later I thought that just, it made me feel good that maybe she sees something in me that she wants later in life.
Yeah.
That for her to say she wants to marry a high school football coach. Because that's all a dad wants. When I think about my kids, I want them to grow up and go, man, my dad was awesome. Like when I die, I want them to go, he was awesome. And so it made me feel like maybe I'm on the way to doing that she could say that she wanted to grow up and marry a high school football coach. And my youngest daughter, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Friday Night Lights, but we couldn't think of a name for her for the longest. And like a week before she's supposed to be born, we don't have we want a lot. And Lila Garrity, in the show, Amber, my wife has always liked the name Lila. And so she's like, why don't we just call her Lila? We're a football family. It's the football movie. She was like, sure. So
there you go.
She's named after Lila Garrity from Friday Night Lights.
That's awesome.
So,
Scott, one thing we like to do, and man, we've so enjoyed this conversation, but one thing we like to do at the end of every one of them is to ask, what's your next adventure? I know you mentioned Atlanta Spartan race, but what's your next adventure? What you got what's on the horizon for you?
Well, I've got several coaching clinics that I'm going to be speaking at, one in Atlanta in 2 weeks. And then there's one in Birmingham in Pelham that I'll be speaking at the week after that. So I'm busy preparing for those and getting slideshows and video ready for all that. And I'm really excited about that. And, I think back to all the lessons that I've learned. I feel like those are platforms God's given me to speak. And so I don't ever want to get up there without somehow mentioning him. So I'm trying to figure out how to weave that in there. Yeah. I've got a Bible verse. 2 Corinthians 4:9 is going to be on all of my slides. And it just talks about, I'm sure you guys know, we persecuted, but not destroyed. And that's a verse that I try to remember because I feel like that's been true throughout my whole life and my coaching career. Like I've been persecuted, but I haven't been destroyed, and God's not going to allow us to be destroyed throughout our life. So I'm going to try to weave that into my presentation because I want to make sure that I'm honoring him and being an example to him. So I'm doing that. I do have a Spartan race coming up in March, and I've got both my kids signed up for a kids race. So couldn't talk my wife into it. She's not about that. She's going to carry the camera and take some pictures and probably have to drive us home. But that's coming up. And then in terms of coaching, I really enjoy the job that I got. I don't know if God ever steers me towards a head coaching job, great. But I really enjoy coaching defense. And I enjoy being the guy out there that's making the calls, on 3rd and 2 and trying to get off the field. So in terms of that, if he ever leads me down that path and it becomes apparent that that's what I need to do, obviously I'll follow in that. But right now I'm happy being the defensive coordinator at Auburn High School. And my focus right now is getting our defense situated in a way and getting our players situated in a way that we can win that first state championship at Auburn High. And our head coach has won 6. And so we're all kind of pushing in that direction to try to get that done for Auburn High School.
Man, well, we'll be rooting for you.
I know you guys will, man.
Yeah, we really enjoyed you joining us and really enjoyed this conversation with you, taking time out of a busy schedule to chat with us and talk about the things we love to talk about. We really I'm appreciative of the reflection on a loss and not just any loss, but a really difficult loss. And I'm thankful for you being sort of vulnerable and sharing that with us. And man, I'm sure people need to hear that. And there's no question that there's someone who needs to hear that just because you're a believer doesn't mean everything's going to be roses and butterflies and awesome all the time. That you are going to lose. We need to learn how to experience that and experience that with grace. And I really appreciate that. And we're so thankful for everyone who listens. Man, I'm even this week had a couple of people message me, I enjoyed this or I enjoyed that on the podcast. And man, really encouraged by the people that listen. And there's oftentimes I have no idea. You never know who's listening to this podcast, and there are folks all over listening. And so we're thankful for everyone who tunes in. who downloads and tunes in. We're thankful for it. Man, there's been a lot of really great folks to leave us reviews. That's one way we're able to grow this podcast. Somebody takes time to leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcasting platform. That helps us grow and helps us be easier to find when you search for the Storied Outdoors on or search for outdoors anything on podcasting network. So those reviews and ratings are super special. Also, if you want to find more content, you can go to www.thestoriedoutdoors.com. Each of these interviews has a specific page and has maybe some pictures, photos, and videos and different things for each guest. So there's lots of extra content on the website. And so we want you to take advantage of that. And then also, if some folks are more YouTubers than they are podcast listeners, these are always going to be, all these videos will be loaded onto YouTube. And so you can stream these interviews and conversations on YouTube on the Storied Outdoors. You can search that on YouTube. And man, as always, we hope these conversations encourage people, right? Not just to write their own stories, but we also want to see people share their own adventures. You said something, Scott. You talked about how I was really good at journaling back then. That I love that. And we want to see people come back to journaling and writing down the things that they've experienced. And so we hope this podcast inspires people to do that very thing, to write their stories down and reflect on those stories and share those adventures in what we like to call the Storied Outdoors.
Yeah. And I would like to just say this, if I can. Thank you guys for having me, man. It's been awesome. But that's one thing that I've enjoyed about listening to the podcast is just listening to people's stories and just listening to people talk. Yeah. And it is very, Brian, you told me we would be just kind of conversational on here, and it is just conversational. And it's like I told you before I read your book, The Devils in Alabama, I don't usually read things like that. And it was such a break from coaching and leadership and all that kind of stuff to just breathe and relax. And that's kind of how I sit in my garage and plug it up to my Bluetooth speaker and just listen to people talk while I'm doing stuff out there in the garage. And it's been awesome. Man. It's been cool.
Well, it's kind of designed to be maybe if we were all sitting around a fire, we'd be telling these same stories.
There you go. I like it. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, man.
Thank you guys, man. I enjoyed it.